Welcome everybody to Talking Elite, and tonight we are talking everything spooky. We're going to be talking about our favorite Halloween-themed wrestlers, our favorite spooky villains, our favorite cult leaders, and Mark. I think Mark wants to play a game.
Is it all about the game? Or
it's on how you play it.
Oh, there we go. It's how you play it.
So thank you guys so much for coming out to Talking Elite. For those of you guys that are listening on Spotify, Mark had on a Saw mask, and great way to start the show, my friend. Thanks for being part of it. So let me introduce you to our panel tonight. We are joined by the new face of the All Elite Zone podcast. He is the wild man himself. He is the Major Mark.
There we go. Thanks for that introduction. That was awesome.
Well, welcome to the show, Mark. I'm glad to have you back, man. This is your second Talking Elite, so it's good to have you, man. And, it's been fun the last few episodes on the watch-alongs, and you've really grown. So I'm excited to see some of your ideas and your talking points tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm ready to go, man. This seems like a pretty fun one to get into this, because we kind of talked about it yesterday, and I was like, yeah, if we could do a show about, get into these type of characters, let's do it. Yeah.
So if you guys weren't watching the watch along last night, we did go through we did do like a quick little round of our favorite spooky wrestlers, and tonight we will for sure go in more detail. Next, we have everybody's favorite bearded wonder. He is the Bubba to my Devon. He is the Triple H to my Shawn Michaels. He is everybody's favorite smiley man. He is known for a very special catchphrase at the end of the night. Please welcome everybody's favorite bearded wonder, Adam.
Hello, thank you. Yes, excited. As you can see, I have my Undertaker background, probably the creepiest, one of the most original creepiest characters in professional wrestling, but I'm excited to talk about it. Halloween's my favorite season, so I'm excited.
Me too, man. Halloween's it's a very special time, especially for like wrestling promotions. I love when they do Halloween themed matches, costumes. It really makes it for fun TV.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I mean, the theming is just great, and I'm excited to talk about all the characters tonight.
Me too, man. Next, we have everybody's favorite podcast producer. He is the biggest CM Punk fan on the face of the earth. He is the ringleader of our circus. He is everybody's favorite person named Connor. Connor!
It's great to be on. Last night was really, really fun. Some stuff we did. If you guys haven't, go back and check that out. It was really, really fun, and this should be really, really fun as well. There's one person in particular, when you talk about spooky wrestlers, I'm going to talk about. But we'll get into that.
Oh, dude, it's going to be a great time. Thanks, Connor, for coming on. Watch along last night was fantastic. It was probably one of the best watch-alongs I think we've done this year, and it's a really good listen and a good laugh. So go back and listen to that, because Mr. Jacobs admits that he loves Hulk Hogan last night. Just kidding. That is the worst joke I will say all night. So thank you guys so much for coming out. For those guys watching live, thank you, Mike. He says hello to the panel. Thank you so much, Mike, for always watching. And then Roy is excited. He says a awesome "Let's go." I think that's how you would say it. So let's go. So thank you. Yeah. So thank you guys for coming out. Of course, my name is Lane. I am the fireman. I am the person that puts out the fires on the podcast. And I am the Texas Nightmare and the biggest Darby Allin fan on the show. So
I have nothing against Darby at all. So
yeah,
I like Darby. So, but you may like him the most. Who knows?
Oh, dude, like, yeah, we'll talk more about Darby later, and especially his tag team partner, because Sting last night. Let's talk briefly before we kind of get into some of our favorite spooky wrestlers. Let's talk about the man of the hour. Best way to start the show off. Let's talk on Sting. Sting, unfortunately, last night made his announcement that he'll be retiring next year at Revolution. Very emotional speech that he gave last night. It was a very empowering, like, this is going to be my last match, but it wasn't like, don't be sad for me. Let's finish the journey strong. For those of you guys that haven't watched, Sting had a really great promo last night, and I think it touched all of us on the show last night. What's your guys' thoughts on Sting officially retiring this year, actually going out on his terms?
I guess I'll start because I think I'm the one here that's actually been watching Sting probably the longest in his career. Because I used to watch the Monday Night Wars growing up. So I kind of grew up with Sting in his career pretty much in WCW. I think it's been a great journey. He mentioned it in his promo last night about, the Ric Flair, Steiners, all the journeys he's done with everybody. Dusty. He mentioned Dusty Rhodes in that promo. I think he's had a great career for being, was he 62, 63, somewhere in there? For being as far as he's come along, I remember a lot of his matches in WCW. I remember the forming of the Wolfpack. I remember some of his TNA stuff, and so I feel like with his journey, I mean, heck, he made it to WWE. Was it a great career at WWE? Not really. I don't think it was great. I think he's doing some of his best stuff now, and even in his TNA days, I think were some of his best work. So it is emotional, to fans of Sting, but I think it's the right time. Now it's him. He can take a step back and actually kind of mentor people and not have to step in the ring and put more wear and tear on his body. He can take kind of producer role or someone that someone can work with, like a Darby Allin, like a Nick Wayne, like an Action Andretti, like work with the young guys. So am I going to miss some of the Sting stuff? I am. But I'm glad he's taking this step and actually be like, I'm done, done wrestling. So
just to look at the impact that Sting has, given, he's the impact of almost every wrestling promotion that he's been in. Even WWE for that split time, dude. Like, it was a very exciting to be a WWE fan. Of course, his legendary career in TNA, doing the Joker Sting. But let's talk real quick since we're talking spooky wrestlers. So, what do you guys think of Sting's transition from Surfer Boy to the Crow? What was your guys' thoughts when that happened? Or what was your thoughts seeing that transition almost to that new character, more aggression, the baseball bat, literally taking on the whole NWO by himself?
For me, I think that was it was a great reinvention for Sting, because that's kind of the point where I started watching wrestling, was seeing that flat top, Sting, blonde hair, and his little, Stinger makeup that he had. But when he turned into that Crow Sting, and when he was just up there in the rafters, I just think that was one of the coolest reinventions of a character, because he seemed way more dominant and scarier. You did not want to mess with this guy. And you didn't get that with blonde Sting, with blonde flat top Sting, though he was great. But that character going into that transformation was just, it glued my eyes to the TV. I was just interested to see, I just wanted to see that camera up there and that spotlight on Sting up in the rafters. And then there he is with his bat and, his big black coat. I mean, it was some iconic stuff. I that did so much for wrestling, and especially the fact that you brought it up, that that he took on basically the whole NWO when NWO was just wiping out the entire roster in WCW, and then there was one guy stood up, and then of course there's that iconic those things where he was pretending to be Sting, and he had the Sting mask, and then he takes it off and it's Sting, and there's that meme of it and stuff, and I just really like that transformation of his character for sure.
That Sting spot, still gets me to this day, especially since he's even done it in AEW. Man, WWE sure missed out on probably one of the funnest wrestling spots of all time.
Yep.
Connor.
No, I was gonna say, yeah, I agree.
Connor, so what has your thoughts been with Sting in AEW? Like, have you enjoyed his run? Do you think this was like the perfect swan song for him?
Yeah, I think I liked how he's going to retire now. I wouldn't have been satisfied with the way things were left if he didn't come back. His last match was against Seth Rollins. It was a really good match, but that couldn't have been it. And his final match should be against The Undertaker, but I don't think we'll ever get that match. Which they had the opportunity, but they went in a different route. I don't know why. That's probably the most missed opportunity in wrestling history. Not doing The Undertaker and Sting WrestleMania 31, but in AEW, he's been really, really good. At first, I think he was supposed to go against Cody Rhodes. Sting mentioned that he was supposed to go against Cody Rhodes, do some stuff with Cody, because he debuted around like a Cody Rhodes angle with Team Taz and all that, but that never happened. But he's had a lot of good matches in AEW. One of my favorites, and probably will always be my favorite Sting match in AEW, and probably the most iconic entrance in AEW, Sting, Darby, and CM Punk versus, I believe it was FTR and MJF. I've got the shirt to that. I've got the poster. Sting's had a lot of good moments. I'm glad he's able to finish his career in AEW. Kind of like he said that he didn't sit right in his career that way. I'm glad he's getting to go out like a legend that he is,
and not just being put over by WWE, or not just being buried by WWE talent.
Yeah, and in AEW, go ahead.
He only won one match in WWE. It was a tag match. He teamed up with John Cena to go against Rollins and Big Show.
That's sad.
Yeah, I think in AEW, I mean his no sells, right, or like the coolest thing, for somebody his age, yeah, and when Daddy Magic and Cole Handler, when they slammed him on the table, and he just gets up, right, or the other one too, where Scorpio Sky, I think he body slammed him or something on the ramp at Daily Space, and then he gets up and he's just standing behind Scorpio, and Scorpio's just like, is he really just standing behind me? It was like, man, some of his coolest. I mean, those are some cool spots, man. Like seriously, he did. They did. I think they did pretty good with him in AEW.
Yeah. I think I agree. I agree on that. I think with AEW's run, and I think it's very fitting that his first match was Revolution 2021. So it's fitting that his last match is Revolution 2024. So I think it's fitting that he ends it at the same pay-per-view he had his first match at. And I like I said, I enjoyed his TNA, but some of his stuff in AEW got to free roam on the microphone. He got to actually be some of his best, probably mic work in AEW.
For sure. For Adam, for you, what WCW match stands out for you? When you think Sting, what comes to mind? What match comes to mind?
I'd have to think about it. It's been so long since I watched some WCW matches. He had a really, really good match against Kevin Nash. I can't remember if it was a Nitro or a pay-per-view, but he had a really solid match. This was obviously during the whole black and white Wolfpack feud of NWO, but they had a really good back and forth match. It wasn't like a quick 5-10 minute match with all this crazy interference. It was a solid maybe 15 minutes. Again, I think the transition from his surfer Sting to the Crow Sting, I think was a genius reinvention for himself, reinventing his character. I loved it. I loved it every time I put on Nitro and they pan up to the rafters and there's Sting, because I was a big fan of the movie The Crow. I love The Crow. It's a tragic story, and to translate that into a pro wrestling character, I think Sting did a really good job doing that. And again, it's most of his best matches in WCW was that during that Wolfpack black and white feud. And so again, it's very hard to remember, But I do remember that match particularly is him and Kevin Nash had a match, and it was actually a pretty solid match.
Which is crazy because Kevin Nash at the time wasn't known for putting on good matches, towards that part of his career. He was more known for that mouthpiece, just causing, anarchy, going against actual wrestling. So, I'm going to have to go back and watch that one for sure. I'm going to go to the comment section real quick. Mike says, because I asked in the comment section what everybody's favorite Sting moment was. And Mike says his match against good old Double J himself in TNA.
I actually remember that match, and I actually remember that feud. It was probably one of the best feuds in TNA at the time. Between the years 2007 and 2010, I think that was some of the best, one of his best feuds in TNA. So
that match will give you chills if you just sit there and watch at nighttime, cut all the lights out, and then it's really quiet, and then he slams the guitar over his head and he no sells, and then that's the first time he really ever done it, and it became a thing. I wish they would have recreated it in AEW.
I think they've done it a few times where they've,
with Jeff Jarrett.
With Jeff Jarrett, but could Jeff Jarrett be Sting's last opponent, or would you want to be like a passing the torch with like Darby Allin?
I think I know who he's going to be teaming up with, and a lot of people's not going to like it.
What's your prediction?
It might be Sting and Goldberg teaming up. I really think that can happen. Because Goldberg's at the end of his career, too. So they both retire together. Maybe they could go get Ryback. Throw Ryback
no. Connor, I love you, man, but stop.
Connor.
Just drop Goldberg, man. Like
I don't want it to happen.
I don't either. Like that's
why are you saying it?
Why are you saying it?
But sometimes the things we don't want have to happen.
Go ahead. I was gonna say Kurt Angle losing to Baron Corbin.
Yes, yeah. It's like for me, it's like as wrestling fans, you're like, I don't want to see this, but I kind of want to see it because it has to happen at some point. It's like what we were talking about with Undertaker and Sting. That ship has sailed. Lane, we talked about this on an episode. We talked about how, I think it was on the Vince episode. And we talked about how that ship sailed, and it was perfect time to have that match. As fans, we wanted to see it. This idea of Goldberg coming back to wrestling for a different company now in the AEW, I think that ship has sailed for Goldberg just because I'm not saying because of his bigger size than Sting, but with a bigger size body frame like that, like you look at him walk around, he's kind of got like the Stone Cold neck, where his neck's all jacked and it doesn't work. And, it's just like, it's like one bad move in the ring and Goldberg can be like paralyzed. So I think like for that, I think as wrestling fans, we're just like, Sting is one thing, like, cause he can still kind of do stuff, but we're glad he's retiring on his note and on his terms. Goldberg just is there. Like, pay me money, I'll show up. Like, that's just my view as a wrestling fan.
And I'll kind of bounce off that, right? Like, I would say, too, that ship has sailed because I think if Tony wanted Goldberg, he could have got him for All In, right? And had him for that, And I think Tony was just like, no, I think I'll pass on that, right? Because Tony's just like, I think I'll pass on him. And then, he ended up getting Edge, It's like, I think that ship has sailed. I think that's all in the back burner now. I don't think he's coming to AEW. I don't think that'll happen. And other thing too is I don't think they want to do a tag team for Sting to share his spotlight for that last match. That last match if it's his last match, it has to be one-on-one. You gotta give us the one-on-one, a good 15, 20-minute banger, and go out on that. I don't want to see him go out with somebody else like as a tag partner.
I mean, it does not need to be the caliber of Baron Corbin like they did Kurt Angle. It needs to be someone that maybe you could do it from his past, maybe like Jeff Jarrett or someone, or you could do someone up and coming, but whoever it is, he needs to win. I know passing the torch, but this is Sting's last match. Ever. We'll never, ever, ever see him in the wrestling ever again.
Yeah.
But I have faith in AEW that they'll do better than Baron Corbin, Kurt Angle.
Other than seeing him do like maybe backstage work, like producing and stuff. That's
Yeah.
the only time we'll see him involved in pro wrestling for anything. He no more ring stuff after Revolution 2024.
Yeah.
For sure.
Which he deserves it to take a step back.
Yeah, I think it's a good time for him. You know, he's given us so many great moments in AEW, and Sting will be doing a special watch along just for you that night. So we love you, brother, and we cannot wait to see your career finish strong. All right, gentlemen, let's go back in time a little bit. Let's go to one of the best character versions of wrestling eras. We're going to talk everything the golden era, and we're going to talk some very interesting spooky characters that I think scared some of the kids back then. I would say scare more kids than nowadays. So the first person that comes to mind when I think somebody's scary is Papa Shango.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Roy beat me to it. But I think Papa Shango was, I think, one of the first really like kind of spooky gimmicks they've had. Because he came along before Undertaker did, correct?
Papa Shango actually kind of came out the same time as Undertaker, but you also have to remember before Papa Shango, his inspiration was Kamala. Kamala kind of gave that voodoo kind of witch doctor kind of vibe that kind of gave birth to Papa Shango. And I agree. I think Papa Shango coming out with the cane and all that stuff and the voodoo heads and all that stuff, he was a creepy guy. And I keep forgetting the guy's real name who played. He went on to play The Godfather. But the guy who played Papa Shango did great. That's also us talk about Sting, where he reinvented himself from Surfer Sting to the Crow Sting. It's kind of like what Papa Shango did when the guy playing him. Again, forgive me, I can't remember the wrestler's real name, but he reinvented himself after that character kind of like blurred out of it. He became the Godfather. But I think Papa Shango was such a creepy character, and I think it was genius to kind of reinvent like the Kamala character, because I believe at that time the guy portraying Kamala was health problems. His knees were getting bad, so they had to come up with a new kind of voodoo character, and I think Papa Shango kind of filled that void.
It was Charles Wright. That's who it was.
Thank you, Charles Wright. Thank you.
Yes, and it's crazy to see, like, Charles Wright was probably one of the best to go from character to character to character. Because think about it, he was Smoke Train, and then everybody jumped on the whole train, and then Papa Shango.
Yeah, and then don't forget he was on Right to Censor too. He was the good. He went from the Godfather to the Good Father. Great character, you know. So,
and was he not with the Nation of Domination?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What his character name was, but
he was yeah, because there's Farouk, Mark Henry, The Rock. I'm trying to remember who D'Lo. I keep forgetting what his name was in Nation Domination, but he was in that group too.
So Mr. Jacobs is one of our hosts on the show. He says Papa Shango was his generation's boogeyman, and I feel like it did pave the way for boogeyman.
He really was. He literally, I think Mr. Jacobs and I are pretty much almost that same age where we remember Papa Shango. Like, we're like, that was our generation's like creepy character, you know, like Karma. Yes, Karma was his name in Nation Domination. Yeah. But yeah, no, Papa Shango, like for us, like growing up, that was a creepy character. So I mean, that was early 90s. We're like, ooh, that guy's scary.
And then don't forget about his biggest moment, cursing the Ultimate Warrior.
Oh, that was a crazy moment watching that. I think it was like he poured like some liquid on Warrior, and it scared us as kids. We're like, oh my God, he hurt the Warrior. So yeah, so that was a scary moment too.
For sure. Let's talk about Kamala. So Kamala, like you said, was kind of like you said, the inspiration basically for Papa Shango. But I feel like Kamala, he could have been so much creepier because he was built to be from a cannibalistic island, and I feel like they could have done so much with that in that time frame.
They could have. The issue with that, and that's the funny part, is up until most recently, like stereotypes of people in the world. We talked about this on the Vince episode about his idea for characters, and something of like an evil voodoo doctor. And he really could have been more. I think the problem with Kamala was the guy portraying him, I don't think was very spot on with timing and all that, because there was the debacle that happened where I can't remember what pay-per-view, might have been a SummerSlam, where he slowly walks to the ring and he was supposed to be there sooner. That was the one where Warrior came out and saved Hogan, because Hogan was getting beat up by Kamala and another guy, but Kamala was delayed on something. But yeah, I think Kamala could have been a lot bigger character. It could have been. I think if the guy portraying him was more spot on, I think he was taken in a different way. Like how some people are like, I can't do this. Like I need to change my character. So I think it could have been, but that's why I think we got Papa Shango, because Charles Wright could pull that off.
I think Charles Wright could be one of the best character wrestlers, like that mindset, I think, of that time frame. I feel like he made every character something special. And unfortunately for Kamala, he didn't have that long of a career. But it's a little fun fact for all my figure collection people out there. He has the rarest Hasbro with that moon belly. I think there was like 4 or 5 made, or 4 or 5 that are out there right now.
Could you imagine what those are going for right now?
Dude,
like what their worth is?
Matt Cardona spent $10,000 on it. It's crazy. It's crazy. So Kamala at least he has, aside from just being a standout character, he at least has one of the rarest action figures out there. So Kamala, rest in peace, buddy. And we hope that you're in that very big wrestling ring in the sky.
I actually got to meet him, kind of on accident, not really meaning to. So he lived in Walls, Mississippi, all the way out in the country. I went to my friend's house, and he says that Kamala lives next door. I didn't believe him, so I just go over there, and I ring the doorbell, and he had both his legs amputated towards the end of his life, and then I guess he was not in the mood, and I just walked away. He started cussing me out and everything, and eventually he comes out. I was like, "I'm sorry, man. I didn't think you lived there." But yeah, he was something
for sure. Mark, do you have any favorite Papa Shango moments or?
No, man. Honestly, I was like thinking about it, and I was like, I remember seeing him, and I think I remember seeing him against Undertaker, if I'm not mistaken, and that would be my only recollection of him, because yeah, I think it's a little bit before my time. I think
just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
All right. Well, the next person we're going to talk about. Actually, we're going to talk about 3 people here. We're going to talk about the great Paul Bearer, The Undertaker, and his brother, Kane. And these guys they literally had some crazy, scary arcs, from casket matches to buried alive matches to Undertaker inventing hell in a cell. So it's crazy to think, when I think something like that has that aura about them, those 3 people come to mind.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, I think The Undertaker was the first character that I was ever spooked about watching wrestling. And Paul Bearer he gave that to him. Like, Paul Bearer was, I know Undertaker would be scary, but I think Paul Bearer made him even scarier, coming out with that urn and, pale with the dark eyes. And it was just like, I was like believing it was real, right? Like I was like, these are like real, like that's a real like Undertaker, like that's like a real dead man. And you know, I remember watching it as a kid, and I was just like freaked out. I was like glued. That was another one that I wanted to see everything that they were doing, and with Paul Bearer with his voice, when he would make that voice, ooh, it was just like that enhanced it even more, right? Because if he just talked like a regular person, it wouldn't have worked. But the way that he came out with that voice, I mean, that took it over the top, right? Because Undertaker didn't really talk, and you know, Paul Bearer was doing the talking, and then Paul Bearer's talking, and he's talking like that, like it was super creepy. It was definitely must watch TV, right? And then oh man, and then when Kane debuted, that was like my prime watching wrestling as a kid. That I could not get enough of that stuff. I mean, Kane coming out in that Hell in a Cell and just ripping off the gate, I was like, what the hell is this thing, you know? And then I think it was Vince, right? I think Vince was commentating, and he's like, that's gotta be Kane. That's his brother Kane. And it was like, what? Undertaker has a brother like all this time? Like what is going on here? And yeah, that was fun times, and that was great television right there. And I think that
Undertaker.
Oh man, like the voice was creepy as hell, man. Like that high pitch that he was going on was super creepy, but it was so fun to watch as a kid. Just being like totally spooked out, right? Like I mean, because I know we have characters now that are spooky and stuff, and I have a nephew that watches wrestling, and he hasn't really told me one that has really spooked him out, but he's kind of a tough nut. But yeah, but I know as a kid that Undertaker, that whole thing just like freaked me out, man, with Undertaker and Paul Bearer for sure.
Well, I think you bring up a very interesting point. I think kids now, I don't feel like they're going to get scared as much, or maybe wrestling just doesn't want to scare their kids. Because if you think about it, lately, like the more scarier characters, maybe besides Bray Wyatt, like they haven't had that what's talked to the camera and actually physically scare the kids, like Papa Shango, Undertaker, like you know, those type of wrestlers did back in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
There's one guy, only can happen on any show, but there's one person that can scare the hell out of everyone, which he's the person that made this whole thing possible, I feel like. They made the spookiness in wrestling on a whole nother level.
Really? And just kind of like looking at it, right? You know, Undertaker had some pretty interesting moments. Adam, would you like to talk about the time that he crucified people and crucified Stephanie McMahon?
Listen, it is crazy to think of that because in most matters, I look at it this viewpoint. ECW did it and they got in trouble. But WWE does it in a creative way and they're good because what it is the visual of it. And you know, before I go on to the whole, you know, Undertaker sacrifice crucifixions kind of stuff, I do want to give props, like Mark was saying, Paul Bearer. Rest in peace to William Moody, guy who portrayed Paul Bearer in the wrestling. Man, he did something with that character that just every time he spoke, like you're just like, that is the creepiest voice ever, and you believed everything. And I love that story of Kane, Undertaker, and Paul all intertwined. That for me is basis of the storylines you see in pro wrestling today. Basically, this whole story taken from a story already in existence, which is Kane and Abel. That's basically the story they told with Kane and Undertaker with Paul Bearer in the middle. But you know, the intertwined story, and it carried on for decades, that story. I mean, it started in 97 and it still went on until both Taker and Kane stepped away from the ring. It just continued because then you gotta remember they formed the Brothers of Destruction. So their whole story kind of carried for almost 25 years. So I do give props to William Moody for bringing that Paul Bearer character because, like Mark said, that oh yes, oh, like it creeped me out as when I was younger. It's like, dude, don't talk like that. That's creepy. But yeah, no, I remember I ordered that pay-per-view when Kane debuted, and I was flabbergasted. I was like, holy crap. But as you see from my background, I think out of the most classic, creepiest wrestlers in history, Undertaker is by far my favorite. I mean, the man's had a career. The man only lost twice at WrestleMania. He's had phenomenal, crazy matches, going from Hell in a Cell to Inferno matches to casket matches. I think just the reinvention of matches, I think a lot of them, you got to credit The Undertaker, as we know him in real life, Mark Calloway. And he's done phenomenal stuff. And that's another guy who's reinvented characters. His American Badass character, riding in on a motorcycle, the Kid Rock, which, by the way, it wasn't Kid Rock first. It was Limp Bizkit. It was Roland. He first debuted, but I think they had a dispute with Limp Bizkit over the rights of that song, so they went to Kid Rock because Kid Rock was a big wrestling fan. So Kid Rock was like, "Yeah, go use my song." But I mean, credit for that for Mark for reinventing it. And then obviously he knew, hey, the Dead Man is a really popular character. Let's roll with that. And they did with 2003 when he was buried alive by Vince. He came back in 2004 as the Dead Man. But some of the things back in the early Attitude Era, like you said, the crucifixions, the abductions, like the Ministry of Darkness, like that was some of the best. That for me, that's the Bloodline. The Ministry of Darkness is what the Bloodline is today, which is a good faction that has layers upon layers of stories that did its course. And you saw it slowly break, and it completely dissolved until Undertaker went back to being solo or with Kane, and that's it. And you never heard about the Ministry of Darkness again. Unlike what we're hearing with the Bloodline today, where it's like it keeps going and going and going. It's like, dude, it's done. Like Ministry of Darkness, I think only lasted like a year, like the story of it. And then it was like a year, and then it disappeared. And Undertaker was just back with Paul Bearer. Or he formed his American Badass character in 2001. And so for me, the Ministry of Darkness was probably one of my favorite factions because that was the creepy, scary faction in pro wrestling was the Ministry of Darkness over in WWF. And so the way that Mark and Will and all those guys involved in it, I loved it. I loved every second of it. It was crazy TV, his dark marriage to Steph on TV before Stone Cold saving them. I remember that. I was watching. I was like, someone's got to stop this. Please stop this. Like this is not right. That girl does not deserve that. And here comes Stone Cold. Obviously, everyone's a Stone Cold Mark. I was like, yes, whoop some ass, So yeah, no, I believe some of those things on TV were just, they were really creepy, and I loved every second of it. I got
a joke for y'all before we move on to the Boogeyman. So an Undertaker's first part of his song, is it bong, gong, or dong? Okay, if it was bong, well, that should be RVD. Dong, it's Val Venus. So it must be gong. That was pretty bad. I'm sorry.
No, and you said the first one was
like a dad joke.
I think this one was the worst joke. The other one
that was like a dad joke.
That was a dad joke. It's a dad wrestling joke.
It was a dad wrestling joke, and I approve of it.
I'm glad. Roy, we are just about to get to Boogeyman. So Roy, one of his scariest wrestlers is the Boogeyman, and I will give the man some credit because to come out with missing teeth and have worms coming out of your mouth, crawl, smoke, man, I don't wonder how many worms that man ate over the years.
I just got the chills just thinking about it.
And I was in the wrestling, that dude freaked me out. Then eventually, I refereed one of his matches. Believe it or not, that dude's crazy. He is his character. Like when he plays his character, he is the boogeyman. That dude is crazy.
Do you guys
Yeah,
have any?
Martin Wright, who played Boogeyman, he is one creep. Like I've seen videos of people at conventions meeting him, and that's exactly how he is in real life with no makeup on. He's just creepy.
Really?
Yeah. But he's nice. Like he's probably one of the nicest people, but he's a nice, creepy guy, you know.
I think Stephanie has a story where she got in the elevator with Boogeyman, and Boogeyman had some worms that fell out of his pocket.
No.
Yeah.
So he just carries around the worms like all the time.
Yeah, he was carrying it. He had like a WWE shoot that day at Titan Towers.
He uses a certain kind of worms. Like he picks out certain kind of worms he uses.
And he would legit eat them, right? And he would legit eat them.
Yeah, he put the whole thing. He swallowed. That dude's sick.
Because I always saw them like coming out of his mouth. I didn't know he like actually swallowed those things. I always thought it was
I witnessed all this. The dude, he doesn't have real teeth. Well, like, do you guys know how he became the boogeyman?
Why don't you tell the story? Because
I have no idea.
So he was on Tough Enough. He was one of the best. He probably would have been a really actual good wrestler, not a really character. He would have been a really good wrestler. He probably would have won some titles, but he lied about his age during the Tough Enough tryouts. So a lot of the coaches were mad about that. One day, Al Snow told him to pick up something, and Al Snow kicked him right in the face, right in the face, and teeth fell out. So they were meeting with this man, and he was mad about it. So what they're going to do? Give him the ridiculous character. I mean, the stupidest character since he did that. And he just ran with it, and it became something that people liked, I guess. And it was scared the hell out of people, I guess.
But but that was super weird though, because like I thought his character was like really cool, but he never got like any kind of push, like whatsoever, right? Like
of his own words, I remember one of his matches, well, two of his matches. As per his words, he's not a wrestler; he's an entertainer.
He was an entertainer.
That's what he was.
Which he was, yeah. He was.
I think that's Vince kind of like reinventing like the Papa Shango Kamala thing for the newer age. Like because a lot of people in the 2000 like mid 2000s had they were younger and they're like, we have no idea who Papa Shango is. We don't know Kamala. So we'll just do this creepy guy called the Boogeyman, and that's kind of like a reincarnation. Like I when I first saw I was like, what the hell is this? Like that, I think for me, that wasn't creepy. Like it scared me. It was creepy. Like, this is creepy. I don't want it on my TV. Like, this is the dumbest character I've ever seen in pro wrestling. And that's way beyond Kerwin White. If nobody knows who Kerwin White is.
But that's probably what WWE thought and Vince thought was just let's just put this idiot on there. And
if nobody knows who Kerwin White was, it was the Caucasian character that Chavo Guerrero played in the early 2000s on WWE. You drive around in a golf cart with golf clubs, and he played like a suburban white guy. That was Chavo Guerrero's character, and it was Kerwin White.
That was so bad,
I don't even remember that.
So Boogeyman comes on. I'm like, I don't know what this is, and now he's spewing, and he has a feud with JBL, who was a champion for a year, like the world champion for a year, and now he's feuding with the Boogeyman. I'm like, what are they doing here? Like, that's when I felt like the writing started to fumble a little bit. I was like, why are they putting a former world champion in a feud with a crazy character like that? And even spitting worms into Jillian Hall's mouth like that. I'm like, I'm done.
No, I don't want
to
talk about that. No.
Yeah, no, it was so. I'm like,
that
was
was
this character.
A very dark character for wrestling. I forgot Chavo played a stereotypical rich white man.
Dude, I watched it. I was like, what is this? Like, why is he playing a suburban white guy, like driving a golf cart with golf clubs? I'm like, Chavo, what are you doing, dude? I know it's a check, but come on.
Before we get to our next wrestler, we're going to go to the comment section real quick. Jason, we will get to the Fiend here very shortly. We're going to save him probably towards the end because there's a lot to talk about with Bray Wyatt. This this is a very underrated spooky wrestler that Roy brought up. But DK with Crazy Steve.
Yeah.
Who's is it El Matador that's with Crazy Steve, or who's the bull for DK?
No, I think it is. I think it is the Matador.
Yes. Dude, did you guys know that Crazy Steve is like almost all the way blind?
Yeah.
It's crazy. Like his partner literally has to like do commands on the ring. So I watched that in Impact taping. And he has to like literally do like commands on the ring to get him to do moves. It's crazy cool how they communicate. So shout out to Crazy Steve and DK, because DK's entrance is one of the coolest. Like, I love their theme song. It's so like spooky and Halloween. If you haven't got the chance, go watch one of their entrances and just listen to that song, because these guys are very underrated. Mike has a question for Connor, actually. Mike asked, what was it like refereeing his match? Did you ever
It was the one match I tried everything to get out of refereeing that match. I came up with excuse after excuse after excuse, but they came up with something to change it. I said, "Oh, I forgot my wrestling tights. Oh, we got some here. Oh, I split my pants. Oh, we got some pants." I said, "Oh, my grandmother needs me or something." She said, then they said, "Well, we'll do the match now, so you don't have to wait so long." Everything I tried to come up with, I had to do the match, because seeing him backstage, the dude, like, he was dropping worms everywhere backstage. Where was that? He was dropping it everywhere. And it is just really disgusting. If you ever have to work with him, you probably won't get out of it. Just don't show up.
Just don't show up.
Blind
Man's by Connor Hayes. Don't show up to a referee and Boogeyman's match. Just let him destroy his opponent and go.
In the ring, it was very, you got to watch where you step. But luckily, the second match I refereed with him, after the first match was kind of, I didn't really try to get out of it. Second match, once I refereed this one match, I kind of figured him out. At independent events, he throws the worms into the crowd. He has a bag, right? And he takes a bunch of them and just throws it into the crowd. He like, some would drop in the ring, but it wasn't like I thought it would be, like in WWE. He would take a whole chunk and throw it at the crowd. And then this one woman has like some nachos and landed it in her.
Oh my god!
Nasty.
And she gets pissed and she throws it. Or I don't know. And like the boogeyman gets out of the ring and starts doing all his. He gets the clock and smashes it over his head. And,
oh my god!
And like, he really smashes it over his head. Like, that's painful.
Dude, the poor bastard that has to clean all that crap up, man. I feel for that person.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and then the next day, the people were supposed to clean it up, which they didn't. And the next day we get there to train, and then the building smells like garbage.
Well, if he threw it in the crowd, someone who was going fishing that night probably was happy. He's like, "I got bait. Like, this is
Shoot, I don't have to stop at the tackle shop. I got
bait.
bait.
Stop anywhere. I got bait."
I just saved myself $5.
Yeah. Ed says, "Yo, Glexi, I have to say, The Undertaker was the scariest wrestler in the beginning of his career."
He was. The moment he debuted at Survivor Series, I was like, "Oh, that's scary right there. That's a scary." And at that point, he was coming out with Brotherly Love. That's who his manager was before Paul Bearer. Yeah. So it was weird seeing Brotherly Love with this creepy character.
Very interesting combination for sure. Because we talked about him in the Undertaker episode. We've talked about that a few times. So, yeah. Mike does not want to touch any of Boogeyman's worms. I do not blame you. But he says that Mike says he has met the Boogeyman and he was nice. I hear that as well. I think we were just discussing that. So, yeah. Awesome. Well, the Boogeyman was awesome. But you know who we haven't talked about yet? What about me? What about Raven?
Oh, no.
Raven to me wasn't so much scary. He was more emo than anything else to me. Like, he was the emo wrestler to me. Like, his feud with Sandman and ECW was probably one of my favorite. Between that feud and his with Tommy Dreamer, those were the two best feuds in ECW. Was that my eyes or did I see a banner coming? That's weird. That's awesome, by the way.
Yeah.
But that's pretty cool. But like I said, he was more emo to me, Raven. But his feuds with Sandman and Dreamer in ECW, those are some of my favorite feuds back in the early '90s of pro wrestling. Like especially when he involved everybody. Raven had a very creative mind, and this comes from the mouth of Tommy Dreamer. This comes from the mouth of Paul Heyman. This comes from the mouth of even WCW people. They said Raven is very creative when it comes to stuff in pro wrestling, and he's got stories. That feud with Tommy literally started out with just him, Tommy, and Beulah, and then they involved the Blue Meanie and Stevie Richards. Then they involved Kamana Wanalea. Then they involved the Pitbulls. Then it involved Shane Douglas. It snowballed, and everybody got involved in that story. And with me, Raven is just a genius. Heck, even his run in TNA for a little bit, he had some awesome matches. I think he was involved in a couple of the Monster Ball matches, and I thought those were awesome because I loved every Monster Ball match that happened in TNA in the early days, and Raven or Abyss were involved in the majority of them.
You know, looking at it, I feel like Raven, he was more of like a psychological kind of, I think, horror villain. And I think that's kind of why I put him on the list for us to talk about, because I know he was a cult leader of the flock, but it was just the way that his mind games that he would do to people, especially with Dreamer.
Yeah, I think it was great. I thought it was the best story in ECW was him and Dreamer. And then the night that Dudley Boys were leaving, won the tag titles, and we're going to go WWE, Raven comes back and wins the titles with Tommy. Like, bitter enemies become tag champs. Like, I think that was such a good, because things fell out for him in WCW. So he came back to ECW like on their last leg. But with him, like, he was just genius in bringing people into stories. And I think that's what made him a unique character.
Very true. You know who I think, now that we're kind of talking WCW, ECW, but one that I feel like is very underrated and I wish I would watch more of, and I have him on my list to watch more of, Vampiro.
Yeah, Vampiro.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like Vampiro was very underrated in WCW. Did he do any ECW, or is he just specifically WCW?
He was mostly WCW. I rarely saw him in any ECW, and I believe Vampiro actually went on to commentary for Lucha Underground with Matt Stryker.
Yeah.
I think they were the commentary team for that show, and I loved it. I loved Vampiro because they involved Vampiro in a storyline with Penta, because him and Penta, he used to be student teacher. So they did the student teacher storyline with Penta versus Vampiro. And man, even at his age and what his body was, Vampiro put on a banger with Penta in that Lucha Underground show. They had a match and it was solid. Like, Vampiro can still go. Like, dude, at that point,
still going. Like, he's
still
on NWA right now.
Yeah, no, he's still going. And I think he's solid. I think he's a great wrestler.
You know, another kind of underrated, group, and just because of their music, can I get a whoop whoop for the Juggalos? Insane Clown Posse. It's crazy. Like, because I just watched. Violent J did an interview with Steve-O, and he talks about he's a lifelong dedicated wrestling fan. And to be, go, up through, I think, ECW and then into WWE, doing like just a few matches they've done, but just to enjoy wrestling. I think they even brought like backyard wrestling to the Gathering of the Juggalos. So shout out to all the Juggalos and Juggalettes out there.
Fucking magnets, man. How do they work?
But, I feel like they had a very fun presence. More clownish, but shout out to Insane Clown Posse. Another group, and I think is awesome to see where two of the guys are at now. The Brood. Looking at, I think they have the coolest entrance
and theme song, right?
Vampiro.
I mean that theme music and that entrance was just, oh man.
Oh, dude,
I was always scared. I was
Christian.
always scared that they were gonna get caught on fire. Right? I was like, y'all are like too close to that fire. Like what? I mean, I would love to hear those stories about how hot it was, because I know Undertaker almost got like burned his face off like one time by the pyro of the fire, and that fire when them just coming out from the bottom. Oh man, and that when that music hit, and then it was all red, right? Like all the lights were red. It was just. That was super cool. Like I loved Gangrel and Edge and Christian with that. That was super fun. And Gangrel, you know, sipping the blood and then spitting it out all over everybody. Like that was like super cool.
It's so crazy to see Christian and Edge both wearing fluffy white shirts and being vampires. And to become one of the biggest tag team champions and probably two of the best world champions in the last, 20, 25 years.
Yeah. And you know what's crazy too is that Gangrel, almost came to AEW, right? He was supposed to do like a one-off appearance. Yeah, or he did do the one-off?
He did one-off,
he had a few appearances. Yeah, he had 2 or 3 appearances, I think.
Because he was brought into that feud with the Hardys and the Young Bucks.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, think about it now. But think about it now with Christian and Edge there. Like,
yeah, that's a possibility.
What if he right? That they could do something all three together. Do some type of promo, and he could still do the one-off. And just come in and spit some blood in Christian's face or something.
Right. But I feel like Gangrel. What's up?
I was gonna say that theme for the Brood was banger. Every time you heard the and then the dude, for me was sick. I was like, dude, this is the sickest entrance I've ever seen.
Yeah, like man, I loved it.
When I was a kid and I was in it, I was like that. Even when they that Hell in a Cell match at WrestleMania that Taker fought Big Boss Man in, and they descended from the top and like snuck that noose down in the ring and they hung Boss Man. Even that was crazy to me. I was like, dude, that is sick. Like, that is crazy what they're doing. That was WrestleMania 15. And I was like, dude, they are having like, even though it's a fake hanging, but I'm like, dude, this is crazy, creepy, and awesome all at the same time. So I love the Brood.
I feel like I wish it would have gone just a little bit longer. And I wish Gangrel would have had a little more time. But he is one of the most beloved wrestlers out there right now. Still making towns. Still making the towns.
I think I believe at a point he was with Luna Vachon. I think they were a couple. If I can remember. He was with someone. I want to say it was her though, because they talked about he was with a female. I can't remember. I want to say it was Luna. Because they had mentioned him in an episode of Dark Side of the Ring. About being in a relationship with someone, and I want to say it was Luna that hit her and Gangrel were a couple for a while. So yeah, no, I hear he's like the nicest guy. So like, I would love to meet him.
Yeah, he's on my bucket list for sure to meet. Man, it's been a lot of fun tonight so far. This has been a great show. Devin was making fun of me for the Juggalo comment. He said that in school one time in 1999. Very funny, Devin. The next person I want to talk about, I think he had not really necessarily full on spooky, but just crazy and wild. His brother was a little more spooky though. And that is the whole broken universe with Matt Hardy and Jeff Hardy, where Broken Matt had an intellectual being, spirit, that would possess the vessel known as Matt Hardy. This was some of the funnest stuff I've ever seen in professional wrestling. Especially, well, at least during TNA. His TNA run as Broken Matt, just god tier.
I agree. I think it's funny because we talk about reinventing yourself, and Matt did that in TNA with the Broken Matt Hardy. And I think it was some of the best thing. I love how he incorporated his family into it, especially since his wife was a wrestler. So he's like, let's incorporate that. And like he had this whole story of the Hardy compound and the whole Vanguard, like that's my projection and all that. Like I love that whole story of Matt just like involving his family and then bringing in Jeff as brother Nero, you know. And I think it was the coolest story. Again, that is the basis of what I keep bringing it up, but what the bloodline is this whole story about a group that never ends. But something about the broken Matt Hardy, Jeff Hardy, you know, brother Nero thing, I feel like that's going to continue for a long time because it's just stuck with you. Especially his laugh, like he's like, yes, yes, like I loved it. Like when he debuted during that pandemic era in AEW, and you saw the Vanguard like come down in the ring, and you're like, wait a minute, and then they go up to the rafters, and it's quiet in the arena, and you could just hear his laugh echo through the arena. It was just the coolest thing I've ever seen. I was like, yes, Broken Matt Hardy in AEW.
The Lake of Reincarnation.
I really hope that fans have been back for a while now. They can go back to that character because I don't think we really got a good glimpse of that character in AEW. Because at that time there was no fans. He even said it himself. It was really hard to. I mean, they did different things like the teleportation, like him and Jericho. It was really hard to make that character work without a crowd, which I did a bunch of cinematic matches in AEW, I believe, Sammy, Guevara. Then that's how the Stadium Stampede came into play a little bit, Matt Hardy.
But don't forget about the Ultimate Deletion with Jeff Hardy and TNA.
Yeah, I feel like that's the only place that's ever worked. No WWE did the Woken Matt Hardy. I don't really feel like it's only worked in TNA, it feels like. That's
it
where
did work a little bit with the cinematic match because I feel like
yeah.
Besides maybe the last Hardy Compound match, every match in the Hardy Compound has just been spectacular, and just the visuals. You know, I love his wife is very gothic. I don't know if you guys know that, especially with Gothic Baby, and I'm excited to see if they do more stuff with Gothic Baby in wrestling. But just the atmosphere and just it was just something spectacular. And his match with Bray, like I can't decide if I love his match with Bray Wyatt better or his match with Jeff Hardy. Because to me, they're both equally and just tell it just a beautiful, multi-level story.
I'd really like to see that whole faction, like how they did in TNA, but bring it into AEW. I don't feel like we got that kind of broken Matt Hardy because he's had a lot of characters in AEW. The Money
version 1, Spot Monkey Hardy brother Matt, and I think he's got to. I think they're building to a new character with him because he keeps like every time I feel like he gets hit or has a moment on Dynamite or Rampage Collision, there's always a callback to either Big Money Matt, Broken Matt. I wonder if they're going to do a split personality gimmick or do something, or a whole new like character for Matt. Because I know he's been talking about bringing a version of Broken Matt that's different from what we saw during the pandemic era and TNA.
Yeah, I really hope they do it at least one more time because I don't feel like they really got the payoff for that character in AEW. But now fans are back, so it'd be a lot easier to, do stuff like that. I wish the pandemic would never happen because imagine the pop that would have been for
him and Brody
Lee. That would have been something so special. I don't know if they was going to be on the same show or not because plans changed, but that would have been really special. But but they made it really cool at Daly's place. Like Adam was saying, like him being on top of the what'd you call it, the balcony, I guess, or the.
It was like the balcony rafters,
it was like the second or like the second tier up there.
Yeah,
it was really cool and something very creative you can do with no fans.
Very true. So as we kind of start to wind down, I think we got pretty much two big wrestlers to kind of, I think, finish the night off with. So let's talk about, before we get to our two main event guys, let's talk briefly about Darby Allin. So I feel like Darby Allin is the reincarnation of Sting, but in his own flavor. I feel like Darby's got the toys, the shirts, the fans wearing his makeup, and to have Sting mentor him, I think Darby's going to get a huge push, I think, after Sting retires. And I think going back to our previous conversation with, about Sting, I think Darby's going to be the one to retire Sting.
I mean, that's pretty much a lot of people's thought, just because he's the student and Sting's the teacher. It's kind of like the Ric Flair Shawn Michaels match. Is if it's where Rick's like, if anyone's going to retire me from WWE, it's you, Shawn, because I took you under my wing and we became good friends, blah, blah, blah. But honestly, I wouldn't mind seeing Sting's last match, again, like we mentioned earlier, against someone from his past, someone like a Jeff Jarrett, or, heck, even someone like a Jeff Hardy. I think we didn't get a proper story with him and Jeff Hardy in TNA just because of stop, Connor.
That infamous match.
Yeah, I don't think we got a solid finish to that feud between Jeff and Sting in TNA because of Jeff's issues. And I think Jeff's in a great place now that, heck, if he wanted to, it could be Jeff and Sting in the final match and actually have that match. I think, as fans, we want to see that match, despite the fact that both guys are, at different styles and both are a little slower than when they were in TNA, but we still want to see that match because we didn't get the proper match in TNA. But I honestly think with Darby is so talented, and his character, again, to me, is a Raven. It's an emo kind of character who's alone, wants to have the people close to him, but he doesn't want to because he wants to do things on his own. He wants to fight his own battles, but he feels like the world is heavy and he wants to challenge it and take the risks. But I like that. I like that in a character. I like the theme song. It works. He's a loner. He's a daredevil. And I think all of it works out for him. And I do see him getting a title here soon. I mean, unless, he decides that, I want to look at other avenues and go to another, company, which I don't know. I feel like he's just glued to AEW and he's going to be one of their staples for a long time. And again, it's the way he connects with the crowd. I think that's so unique that a pro wrestler can do that. We see it throughout our history of pro wrestling where, Hulk Hogan connected with most of the crowds in the 80s, and then, you also got Andre the Giant at some point connected with the crowd. You had Roddy Piper connect with the crowd. Good guys and bad guys. They connected with the crowd. 90s, you had Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, Ultimate Warrior. 2000s, you had Kurt Angle, John Cena, The Undertaker, through the 90s and 2000s. You have these people that connect. And to the new generation, Darby Allin is that young generational wrestler that connects with the young kids in the crowd. Because some of those young kids are like them. They're daredevils. They take risks. And they see this guy. They're like, wow, he's cool. He's taking risks. He's jumping out of planes in the water. He's skateboarding down the ramp. That's cool. Like, he connects with the crowd. And I think that's why I like Darby Allin, and I feel like, he's branching out a little bit outside of wrestling. Like, he's doing the Mount Everest thing. And, he's doing all these different things. Like, it's good. It's good to take a break. Give your body that break from pro wrestling. That's a longevity thing. And if he keeps doing that, he might last a long time in pro wrestling.
Yeah. I love his vignettes because for those guys that don't know, Darby went to film school. And he shoots him and his director friends in Washington shoot all of his vignettes. So I feel like that is something that really stood out for me early on before I even knew who he was. Because remember, Cody laid out the challenge and Darby had the whole destroyed car, the skateboard. I'm like, who is this guy? And the next thing you know, man, his vignettes just get better and better. Whether it's body bags, stapling his opponent's piece of a piece of paper of their opponent's face on his head. Darby really has. I would say he's a mixture of Raven and Sting. I feel like he kind of takes both huge elements of both those guys, and then takes the love of Jeff Hardy's spot monkey.
No, I agree. I definitely agree. That's where I see Darby is he's a mixture of all three of those characters, but it works because he can run with it. I think, but again, it's funny because it gets to a point where you're gonna have to reinvent yourself because at some point that audience that you're with, they grow and you have to grow with them. And some of the stuff that they like you did before, they don't like it anymore. It's kind of like, a lot of people with movies. Like, I stopped watching Fast and the Furious after like the third or fourth one, just because it's the same thing to me and I want something new in an action car chase, kind of a car movie, but it's the same thing, so because
that's an interesting point, right? Is that like I think we can all be consensus that we all like Darby, right? I mean, his style of wrestling is different. I mean, I know he was one of the ones like, yeah, they call him a pillar, but I never thought about him that way. I always just thought that this is what I wanted when I watched AEW, right? I wanted something different, and he was definitely different. And then his smaller stature, right? Like he's not the biggest guy, but he's so high paced, right? And but he's not a luchador, right? He's a hard paced, hard hitter. And it's like, you really don't see that, right? And he was like one of those guys that just kind of stood out, right? When you watch the EW, I know for me, when I started watching EW, like I was like, damn, I like this guy. Like this is pretty badass what he's doing. I'm like, and then going to your point that that eventually it's gonna wear off. But I feel like what happens then is, for something for me that I imagine is him, he has the half face, right? And he's a baby face. When he gets to that point where I feel like he's going to get to that point where he needs to turn heel and then do a full face and just like, instead of white, it's dark, and just go like dark Darby, and go to like, just go full gothic with it, right? Like he's like half gothic, right? And then half, regular Darby, and I feel like you can definitely do something with that when that time comes, that it's like, yeah, this is kind of wearing out. Because like you said, it is going to wear out. Like you said, people grow, it's not going to last forever. He probably could get away with it for another couple of years. But I feel like, yeah, Darby is one of those guys could definitely hold that world championship belt. I definitely see that sometime. And like I said, I think after Sting, after that is done, I feel like Darby can definitely get a run, in some way or another. Even if it's not even the world championship belt, he can go after the international belt. Like he can do all those things too. So I definitely feel like Darby and Darby's not going anywhere. I think Darby has already come out and said that he's an AEW lifer. That he's not going to go anywhere. He doesn't care about WWE because WWE is not going to let him do what he wants to do out there in the ring. And like you said, all his vignettes that he does, WWE won't allow him to do that. So he's, he likes what he does. The fact that he filmed that stuff with Edge was super cool. Like I love that he was part of that. That he gave, Edge Adam Cole gave him the car, and told him like the cool spot to drive around Seattle and stuff. I thought that was like really cool. But yeah, I definitely feel like Darby's still gonna get a push, and honestly, he doesn't even need it, right? I mean, any match that Darby's on, you're gonna get a banger. It doesn't even need to be a belt. And that's the one thing I love about Darby is that I want to watch his matches no matter what. It doesn't even matter if he's fighting for a belt. I want to watch his matches, because I already know he's gonna do some crazy ass stuff that I'm just like, dude, are you serious? Like, how are you not broken in half by now? And that's that. I think that's one thing I love about Darby. Darby's, yeah, he's a unique, one of a kind, type of deal that you're not going to see very often.
Another very specific individual. I don't know if you guys are seeing me hinting at it. Our next person in the chat. But I feel like when you speak of somebody that's super evil, you got to think the great Donovan Danhausen.
That's
the very nice, very evil, loved by all, This man.
Apparently not by all. Apparently, you know, 'cause there's been some discourse with him lately on the X timeline that I've been seeing, which I'm not too fond of. I love Danhausen. Because right, love that Danhausen.
Love that Danhausen. Give him all
I
the
mean,
monies.
I saw Danhausen. I remember I started watching Ring of Honor again, right, when he was there, and he was teaming with PCO, and I was watching a lot of like not I was trying to get to watch Ring of Honor, but it was just like so hard to watch like Ring of Honor before, you know, they went out and Tony bought it and stuff, and I would watch his unboxings, and then I seen him at the toy stores and all that stuff, watching his blogs or whatever. I liked him. I liked him as you know, as a character. I always thought that he was cool the way he talked. He was hilarious to me. I love wrestlers that make me laugh, and they do like their little gimmicks in the ring, and when you can make me laugh while you're wrestling, like I love that. Like I don't care if you lose. You know, because I mean, pretty much all the matches that I saw him, he lost. But if you make me laugh and you entertain me, like I'm gonna roll with you because you're cool. You know, on that basis, that you know, because right. I mean, I think when we watch wrestling, we want to get something out of it. We don't just want to watch a match and oh, it's a good match. I mean, we want to see good matches, but sometimes you can watch a match and it's just like it just goes through the motions, right? But with Danhausen, you always got something different, right? Or he's getting the teeth out, and he's. And it was funny too because watching those matches, he was doing those matches with an empty crowd, and I didn't like that because it felt like he needed to like be more interactive with the audience. So it kind of took something away. But with the teeth, you know, getting the teeth out, the jar full of teeth, and then shoving it down the opponent's mouth, I thought it was a really cool thing. And I'm gonna just be one to say that yeah, I love that Danhausen. I don't care what anybody says; he's always gonna be cool in my book for sure.
You know, it's crazy.
Mark, I am a mark for Danhausen. I love Danhausen. Connor can attest to this. When we went to AEW, the shirt I wore was my Danhausen CM Punk shirt. I love Danhausen. I love his vlogs. I love what he does in professional wrestling. The fact that man has built a fan base by barely having any matches on TV is amazing. Yep. And it is fantastic what he can do with that. And for me, that's someone I like because if you watch some of his old tapes, he didn't have the makeup on. He just wrestled as Donovan Danhausen. And, you know, he had good matches, but he's like, I need to do something to stand out because all these wrestlers have certain things about them. He's like, you know what? I'm going to paint my face. I'm going to create this character. And the makeup actually is inspired by the movie The Exorcist. I don't know if a lot of you guys seen The Exorcist, but it was inspired by the demon creature when they do that flash and you see his face.
Oh, the one on the cabinet, right? The one that happened.
Yes,
like,
Oh, like the older Exorcist movie. And I keep forgetting the name. It's like the Zuzu or something like that, but it's the painted face. He designed that after that because Danhausen is a big fan of comics. He's a big fan of movies, big fan of horror stuff. And so he created that. Yeah, he created that. And I love it. It's a character that, for me, a modern day character for me. And I love it. I think that's why I'm a big fan. I'm a big mark for Danhausen. I mean, when he debuted in that match with Adam Cole and Orange, and he came out on the chair and he cursed Adam Cole, I was like, yeah, Danhausen's here. Like, yeah, dude, I loved his vlogs. I love his vlogs. The way he interviews other wrestlers, hilarious. You know, absolutely. The way he calls other wrestlers by different names. You know, he calls CM Punk Pepsi Phil. And I love that. You know, like they're good friends and I love it. I think he calls John Moxley Paquette, like after Renee Paquette. Like he calls him John Moxley Paquette. And him and, if you guys watch it, him and Jericho had a match on the Jericho Cruise. And Jericho actually painted his face with Danhausen. That's right. I remember that. And it was Jerichohausen was the team. And I was like, dude, that's awesome. But Danhausen is such a good, like, a promoter of himself, but he also is great working with anybody in professional wrestling. I have not heard, you hear all these stories about, who's a tough person to work with in the industry. Never heard one person say Danhausen. Like everybody's got something positive to say about Danhausen. Yeah. Like they love his character. They love his personality. I mean, the guy, like when you hear him talk regularly and then his Danhausen voice, you're like, wait, no, that's not the same person. That is definitely not the same person. But the fact that he creates this character and it's kind of like Matt Hardy with Woken Matt Hardy. It was like he created something different that we've never seen Matt Hardy do before. Well, Donovan Danhausen just took his background in wrestling and created this character. Doesn't need a match. He just needs to appear and people go crazy. I mean, Connor, freaking the Nashville show that I first started talking to you after. It was the same night that, Thunder Rosa and Mercedes had that street fight. They did the after show where he brought out like Chris Statlander and Best Friends. And then who else did he bring out? Danhausen. And when Danhausen came out, that crowd went wild because they were chanting for him all night. That's the impact that someone has. And that's why I think I love Danhausen. I mean, I love that Danhausen. He's just a down-to-earth kind of character and person.
Even Jim Cornette likes Danhausen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's saying a lot because Jim Cornette does not like many independent or AEW talent.
Yeah, he pretty much hates everything AEW and independent.
Well, Jim doesn't like character kind of wrestlers. He doesn't. He's not big on those anymore. He likes gimmicks, but he likes gimmicks more in a match style, or gimmicks in like a storyline. He doesn't like gimmick wrestling, but he loves the Danhausen character and the person. That just shows you that the Donovan Danhausen is a really cool guy.
Yeah, and he's very nice, very evil.
I like Jim Cornette to like him. That's a lot.
Yeah,
it's a lot to get. You're doing something right if Jim Cornette's liking what you're doing.
So before we move on to Bray Wyatt and Mr. Brody Lee, because I feel like that's the best way to end the show. Adam, Mark, and Connor, do you know who Danhausen based his character off of?
Danhausen?
What is classic horror character?
Well, Danhausen?
Is it Sven Gulli?
It was like Svengoolie and Nosferatu.
Ratu, that's right.
Both he credits both those guys because he first just had like this really creepy demon makeup, and I think he did an interview with Chris Van Vliet about it. Went from this creepy demon makeup, went to a Halloween costume party, like, hey, why don't you try doing it like Nosferatu? And then it just snowballed into Danhausen today. So. Yeah,
he credits Svengoolie a lot in interviews. Yes. He talks about Svengoolie, and actually I grew up with Svengoolie in Chicagoland. He was big on Saturday mornings. He would show all the classic horror movies, like the black and whites and like the early 60s and 70s. And like that was our morning on Saturdays, was watching Svengoolie.
Well, guys, I think it's time we follow the buzzards. And let's talk about the Wyatt family, and we'll talk about the Fiend here in a second. The Wyatt family, I loved their creepy aesthetic. I feel like it had that Jim Jones, it had that Manson family. Like Bray literally challenged, he literally challenged himself and just dug deep and became a huge cult leader. Because think about it, nobody booed Bray Wyatt. He was a monster. Him and his crew was monsters, but everybody had the flashlights out. They were the fireflies. They were lighting the way for WWE's savior. Looking back, I know we had a whole episode on Bray Wyatt, rest in peace, for his his memorial episode. But what was do you have like a specific line or a specific match that really creeped you out, or moment of his career that's like, man, this is giving me chills. This is actually kind of spooky?
Bray Wyatt. He's had a lot of spooky matches. But if I had to say one, probably have to be what was the match at no, I wouldn't say that one because he wasn't really wrestling in the match really. Let's say him and Bryan Danielson or Daniel Bryan in WWE. Their match was really good. And Bryan Danielson joined the Wyatt family for a little bit.
Yep. That was really cool time because just the visual of the two of them in a steel cage tag teaming and Bray Wyatt, you know, basically going to hug his son, and Danielson attacks him, removes the skin of the Wyatt family, and is back to the Yes Movement. I felt like both him and Danielson had a very poetic story right there.
Yeah.
And don't forget all the vignettes that were filmed in the bayou and the Wyatt compound.
Yeah.
No, I thoroughly enjoyed the Wyatt character. A lot of people, you know, so the basis, and we talked about this on the episode about Bray Wyatt. The basis of his Bray Wyatt character was actually two characters. It was Max Caddy. It was Robert De Niro's Max Caddy character from Cape Fear, and it was another pro wrestler who went by the name of Waylon Mercy. Hence why one of his characters on the Funhouse was Mercy, the Buzzard, or Mercy Buzzard, or whatever it was.
Mercy Buzzard, yep.
Yeah. And so it was kind of his ode to Mercy Whalen for inspiring this character. And I loved it. We had him as Husky Harris. I said, that just doesn't work. But then he came back as this creepy Bayou character, and it's like, dude, this is genius. Like, this is creepy character, and it gave me that. And I didn't realize it until I read about it, that it was based on Robert De Niro's Max Caddy character from Cape Fear, because I had seen that movie when I was younger, and I was like, dude, yeah, I can totally see where this character comes from. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. So,
Mark, what was your favorite? What was your favorite moment of Bray's? Did you love Bray Wyatt's character when he first started, or were you more of a huge fan of the Fiend? Like, walk me through.
Man, well, I'll just say when Bray Wyatt came out, and with Luke Harper and Eric Rowan, those guys with those masks, they came out, and Braun Strowman actually too. I mean, once they added Braun Strowman, they just seemed like they were just this unstoppable force, right? And it was super creepy when they would come out with those masks. What was it, like a lamb or something, or some type of...
It was the sheep.
Yeah, sheep, and it was just like super creepy, right? It gave you like those super, like, oh, these guys like live out in the out in the wild, and they just kidnap you and they murder you, right? Like Texas Chainsaw Massacre or something. Like, it gave you that type of vibe, right? And it was creepy, and then they were so dominant. It was a thing, like they were all huge guys, right? Like there was no like weak link in the arm in the chain. Like they were just like these big, strong dudes. They were super creepy, and it was just like, is anybody gonna stop these guys? Like what is, like these guys could have just like ran over everybody. And I love that. I love when they were all together. I thought that was super cool. It was very entertaining. Like I said, like anytime you can have those type of guys that doing that and look so dominant and yet creepy at the same time, it's just, that's the stuff that takes you over the top. And then when Bray came back as the Fiend, I mean, that was just awesome. I mean, when I first saw him and he came out as the Fiend, and he came out with the lamp, that was like his old face, has to be one of the creepiest things I ever seen in my entire life. That it was like him on the lamp, right? Like his face was there and his mouth is open over the light, and it was just like, what the hell is this? Like, what is going on here? Like, this is, and then the I guess when I said the remix of his intro song, it just made it even more creepier, more freaking awesome, more badass. Like I was just like, I loved everything about the Fiend. Like, all I wanted to see was more of the Fiend. And who was the one that he first came out to? Was it Finn Balor?
Where he first snapped Finn Balor's neck.
Man, and then that creepy like screech would just come out, yes. Right? And then you just see like a little bit of light that would just come out, and then, man. And it was just like, holy crap. Like, and at first, you were like, wait, who is that? Wait, that's Bray Wyatt. And then they're like, that's the Fiend. And it's just like, the Fiend? Like, what is that? Like, that is super cool. Like, I love that. I love, that was a type of thing that we go back to when we talk about Sting, that reinvention, because I do feel like Bray's character kind of got stale, right? When kind of Braun went his own way, and it kind of felt like Bray was in a little bit of a limbo there, and the fact that I'm thinking that he came up with the character because I believe a lot of people said that Bray had a good wrestling mind. He had a lot of cool ideas. Like, he was a good storyteller. That he had a lot of great stories. So I like to believe that was his idea, and it was a freaking great one. And thinking about that, I'm thinking about Finn Balor too, and the Demon. Like, that was super cool as well. With Finn Balor doing the Demon, I absolutely love Finn Balor as a Demon. But I do like these characters taking these like extremely dark turns. Like, that's something that I enjoy watching, because you're just wondering like what they're gonna do next. And it was like that with the Fiend and Bray Wyatt. Like, once he became the Fiend, it was just like, who's he gonna attack, right? Like, once he got over with the feud with somebody, it was like, who's next, right? Like, you were just, almost like on every like end of Raw episode or SmackDown episode. What's that? What's that called?
Did you say who's next?
Yeah.
Stop, Connor. Stop.
Stop it.
It's happening.
No.
But I'll pretty much end on that. That I was just glued to my TV, just wondering at the end, because he knew it was going to come out at the end of a show, right? So it was like those last 10 minutes, you were just like glued to the TV, like, is he going to come out now? And you're just like waiting, like you're just waiting for those lights to just black out, and it's like, oh, there he is. And then I just loved the Fiend as the Fiend was just a super awesome character that I absolutely loved.
Well, don't forget too, like I thought his Steve Burns character, like the mental image. I feel like it was like we're watching a mental image of him, what he thinks himself as. Like, I feel like you were seeing the two sides, of him, battling it out, trying to gain control. Because you have the Steve Burns character with the children's programming, and just all cutesy and missing people. But then there was like a little synopsis of, the Husky Harris character, Huskus the pig. And then you had, was it Heel and Hurt for his gloves, if I remember correctly. Everything like that. And then him burning his Bray Wyatt, cutout. And then making fun of Vince McMahon. And then leading up to probably one of the best matches of the pandemic era, with that Firefly Funhouse, and taking John Cena through, his life. It was almost like, this is your life, Cena, and kind of revisiting, their feud when he was just the original, cult leader Bray. So Bray was a very great character for sure. And then, one of his own disciples goes on and becomes the leader of another cult with Mr. Brody Lee. Like my transition there. But with Mr. Brody Lee, I feel like he had his whole exiled one. Like, I loved that monster. I love that well-educated, smart monster, and him leading the Dark Order. I think the Dark Order was doing great with their vignettes. Evil, and Stu Grayson going out, making people part members. They were advertising. They were just handing stuff out, and then, we're building up who's the exiled one. Is it going to be Christopher Daniels, Matt Hardy? And then and then have Mr. Brody Lee just have this very spooky, just, like that intro of him just speaking that robotic voice, and then transitioning, to him to be, the normal, to his normal voice, and just coming out and just doing all the things he did. Like, he was building that character and that faction every week through Dynamite, Rampage, Dark. He was on Talking Elite. You literally, Mr. Brody Lee had something very special.
Yeah, I think we didn't really get full potential with Brody. I really wish we did, because I even loved it. It was kooky and crazy, but I even loved his Bludgeon Brothers characters with Eric Rowan. And we had him as the Exalted One in AEW, and he feuds with Cody for the TNT title and he wins it. And it's sad we didn't get a full potential with him with a crowd. because you can only imagine what the reaction would be when you get him with a crowd. Because like Bray Wyatt, Brody Lee was just smart when it came to owning a character, being in ring, doing everything he can in ring, his brutality in the ring with his matches. Heck, I mean, when he returned and it was him, Wyatt, and Orton, just the three of them, I thought that was the best version, one of the best versions of the Wyatt family. Just because, you know, each one of them had their own kind of persona in the group. You know, you had Bray as the leader, you had Orton as his right hand man, and then Luke as the strong hand. You know, and like it just worked for me. You know, and I really wish we would have gotten more of Brody Lee in AEW as the Exalted One, because God knows where that whole Dark Order would be today if we had the route we were going, a darker route than what we get with the comedic side. Although Connor and I have talked about it, I think we talked about it a couple times on here too, Lane, that we love this new turn of Dark Order going back to their origins of being mean and being dark. You know, they've been comedy for a while, but then, you know, watching them back on TV of them, you know, pretty much turning their backs on Adam Page and becoming more dark and sinister in their matches and cheating to win. Like, that's the Dark Order that I feel could have been with Brody Lee, more darker, more brutal, and everything like that. So it's kind of sad that we lost that when Brody Lee passed.
Yeah,
I really
that
wish.
was hard for sure.
I really wish Wyndham Rotunda, Bray Wyatt, I wish he would have chose to go to AEW instead of returning to WWE, because I believe he could have turned the Dark Order around, because he's got the same kind of mindset as Brody Lee.
That would have been so good.
Because they were together, obviously. Yeah, I'm curious to see where the Dark Order's going to go now. But, you know, Brody Lee, even in his short run, he was John Moxley at Double or Nothing 2020, which was a really, really good match. Of course, the Codys will probably be his best matches in AEW when you look at it. Dog Collar. And he won the title against Cody. Basically, a squash match. He just destroyed
Cody.
Like, that
destroyed Cody.
I feel like that night when he won the TNT title was when the Dark Order was at its peak. Because Anna Jay, I think, officially joined. She choked out Brandy Rhodes. Like, everyone was in full sync. That's when they fully came together, I feel like.
And remember when they got the new AEW TNT title, and I remember him dumping the bag on Cody. That was so freaking cool, man. That was super cool.
He broke the championship in the bag.
Yeah.
That was a really cool moment, and the dog collar match was just super violent. You know, it paid homage to like, you know, to Greg Valentine, and it was just one of the best moments. And I'm sad that it was like his last moment in AEW.
Yeah. I mean, it's sad because we lost. I mean, I'm glad we saved these two for last, because those two are, to me, are the modern day Undertaker Kane. I feel like those two working together basically created magic when it comes to darkness and just evil kind of like stories and storylines, and these dark characters who have something to hide and are just evil to their hearts, but they portray it so well on in the ring and in stories, and both of their minds combined just had good storytelling. And I think my heart goes out. I think everybody said this too when he passed. I think everybody's hearts go out to Eric Rowan, and heck, even Braun Strowman, but Eric Rowan, because he worked with Bray and Brody for a long time. And within, what is it, 2 years about, he lost two of his best friends, almost his brothers, within a 2-year span. And, you know, imagine the stories that would continue if all those guys are still together right now. You know, with Bray's ideas and writing and Brody's execution of them, and Eric just being there and enjoying it. Like, heck, even Braun being there. Like, I think we would see something different. I don't think we would have what we have with the Bloodline. I think we'd have something better, darker. And you could kind of go back to what we're talking about. This topic is spooky wrestlers. we have a whole creepy club again outside of a reinvented Wyatt family. But could you imagine an integration of the Wyatt family with Dark Order? Like that together, that to me is New Age dark, a Ministry of Darkness. I talked about it earlier, how much I love that faction in the early Attitude Era of WWF. I would love that as a faction had we not lost Brody and Bray, because I feel like that would be an amazing faction. You know,
and I think
you could have the Wyatt Dark Order.
And I think that I really believe that if Brody, you know, rest in peace, but man, had he not passed away, I seriously think that Bray would have came with him if he was still alive. I think that was the one thing that deterred him away, was Brody not being there, right? Because I believe that Brody, I think it was Brody's wife that said that, you know, he was constantly texting him, telling him how much he loved AEW and how it was awesome over there. And he goes, you know, I think he was like telling him, "I want you here, brother." Like, because he was getting so much creative freedom that they didn't get in WWE, and he was just telling him how much fun that it is to do it over there in AEW. And I swear, I really believe that if Brody had not passed away, you know, Bray Wyatt would have been there as well, and they would have done some crazy things with AEW.
The stories would have been amazing. If Brody hadn't passed and Bray did jump ship after being released from WWE, if he jumped ship to AEW, I guarantee you today we would have really good stories. You could imagine him, Brody, and Dark Order versus the Elite, versus Jericho Appreciation Society versus, you know, all those factions, like all these intertwined stories. And it is amazing. And it's amazing that Bray had so many ideas outside of pro wrestling. You know, there was the idea of him making horror movies, you know, and, I feel like if he hadn't gotten sick and passed, I still feel like that would have been an avenue for him.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's always those what ifs. Like, what if this never happened? What would we have today in pro wrestling? So I'm actually glad we ended on these two, because those two, especially Bray, when it comes to spooky characters from the past and kind of introducing them to a new generation, Bray understood that. And I think his passion for horror and his ideas for spookiness and characters definitely changed the face of what we talk about when it comes to spooky wrestlers.
Very true. You know, like I feel like this was the best way to end the show. Thank you guys so much for coming out tonight. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. This one was a lot of fun to do and to get you guys in the spirit for Halloween. I want to say thank you again to my wonderful friends for coming on, Adam, Connor, and Mark. It's always a pleasure to talk wrestling with you guys. So before we kind of close up, I'm going to go to the comment section one last time before we sign off. I saw a very nice comment for Mark. Mike is loving you being part of the show. He says, nice to see you on, Mark. You've been a great addition.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. That's very cool of you to say. Thank you.
Jason's favorite Bray Wyatt match was with Cena at WrestleMania 36. Davis loved Orton and Wyatt. You know, there was a lot of cool story elements with that one as well. Jason, his answer to my question in the comments was who your favorite spooky wrestler is. So if you guys are listening to this past our live recording, make sure you guys leave a comment down below. And if there's comments, we'll read a couple of them here on the next episode. So Jason says his was Kamala. So, I guess the thing is froze. Jason's was Kamala, and Mike's was Boogeyman. So, very good picks. Before I sign off, let's just do a quick little round robin. Who is your favorite spooky wrestler? We're going to start with the man down below. Adam, who is your favorite spooky wrestler?
Man himself, the legend, The Undertaker. So I watched him debut and I watched him retire. So yes, that's by far my favorite. I'm like Dave LaGreca from Busted Open. I'm a mark for Undertaker.
You're a mark for Undertaker. What about the biggest Mark in the podcast? Mark, who is your favorite spooky wrestler?
So yesterday, we kind of delved on this yesterday, right, when we were going through the live, and I know I had said Boogeyman, but thinking about it, if I'm gonna go full all around character that was great spooky and a great wrestler, I'm gonna go with the Fiend. I have to go with the Fiend. That's just, I mean, it's almost prisoner of the moment as well, because he was, probably the most recent one. We could go back on all these older characters and all that stuff, but yeah, I think the Fiend, just because all the way around, that whole character, everything about it was just awesome. Have to go with the Fiend.
Very good choice. Connor, what about you?
Goldberg.
Yeah, I was gonna say Goldberg.
He's the creepiest, man.
Yeah, he was so creepy that he had so many bad matches, and it's so creepy watching his bad matches. I know. I'm gonna have to say, I want spooky in real life events to Boogeyman. He's probably will never be another Boogeyman, and he introduced Little Boogeyman. I wanted to meet him. I want to meet
Boogeyman.
I want to meet Little Boogeyman. I've met the Boogeyman, but seeing them together and how he would get on his back and stuff, that was really, really creepy. I'm going with the Boogeyman.
Very good choice. And then for myself, you know what? I'm going to say someone different. I'm going to go with Kane.
Nice.
I think Kane for me was he was a monster. He had the hate. Him attacking Undertaker, ripping the door off Hell in a Cell. Very special moments. So I'm going to go with Kane.
Good call.
All right. And then Davis, his weird, but Jake Roberts. I didn't even think about Jake Roberts, but I agree. Him and Damien.
It's not weird either. Yeah.
It's weird. It's a good pick.
It's a good pick. Yeah.
That's an honorable mention right there.
Very honorable mention. There we go.
He has some spooky promos in like the middle of the dark outside and stuff. They were kind of spooky. So.
And I want to say, I want to do another honorable mention. I know I mentioned her yesterday, but Abaddon, I need more Abaddon. Yes. I love her freaking gimmick. She is super terrifying. She needs more. We need to somehow get Tony to get her more on TV, because this is ridiculous. I need my Abaddon fix. Like she's.
And I'm with you on that, Mark. There was a lot of good female creepy characters. Obviously, Daphne was kind of like a male version of Raven. I enjoyed Daphne's character. She was crazy kind. You also got some of the other ones now. Jessica Havoc. She's got that creepy, like the mask that she comes out. It's creepy, So some honorable mentions for some of the female wrestlers too that have creepy characters.
Do another one, Connor. Do another female honorable mention.
Marina Shafir.
Heck no.
This is so rude.
She's actually grown on me. I'm sorry, Connor. I know you don't like her. She's grown on me, by the way. So
every time she throws the socks out in the crowd, if I was there, I'd throw them back.
You would do the whole when Cody would throw his belt out there to the ring, out there to the audience and throw it back. That's you with their socks. I could see it.
I feel like she needs a whole. Go watch the All Elite Shakeup we did. The gimmick Shakeup we did with the AEW. Do that to Marina Shafir, and I will like her. Do it. That's all you got to do is do that. Then people will like her, and she probably will become a champion. If anyone else has seen that, go back and watch that. If they do that, I think she'll be all right. But right now, I don't know what the hell is going on.
All right. That's going to do it tonight for Talking Elite. From all of us here at the All Elite Zone, thank you guys so much for watching. We have a big interview coming up with AEW star Brandon Cutler. He'll be interviewing on November 11th. So make sure you come on, ask your questions in the comment section. I'm super excited for this interview. He's a great guy. I cannot wait to nerd out with him and talk everything from Dungeons and Dragons, video games, to wrestling. It's going to be a lot of fun. I am super excited. Also, don't forget, we have a couple interviews that were done last couple weeks. We have the Pope. Go back and watch his interview. That one's a very great interview, great motivational, just it makes you feel good inside as well. Great story, especially from Vince to some of his favorite wrestling matches and moments. So go watch that. Also, don't forget we'll be doing watch-alongs weekly. So make sure you guys stay tuned for our socials on when we go live. It's just fun, shoot the shit type stuff. It's a great time. So make sure you guys check that out. Connor, is there anything you want to add before we sign off?
There is one more interview, which will probably close the year for the interviews, probably for our 2 anniversary. I wish I could say who it was, but I don't want to say it. It did not happen because this person will be the biggest person we would have ever had on. And only one person knows who it is. Adam knows who it is.
But I'm gonna be quiet.
This person.
I'm gonna be DMing you, Adam. Try to get it out of you. You can give me a quiz on it.
I'm just gonna give you the runaround, Mark. I'm just gonna give you the runaround, buddy.
All I'm gonna say is this person is it's hard not giving it away, but I will say one of the biggest wrestlers of all time, and he's bald-headed. That's all I'm gonna say. Maybe it could be Goldberg. I keep on talking about him a lot, so maybe Goldberg. I don't know.
Let's stop teasing the crowd. That'll be coming up here shortly. Connor will be making an announcement on one of our shows. So make sure you stay tuned for that because it's going to be exciting.
Yeah.
Don't forget, we are also having an anniversary show coming up here very shortly as well. So we are approaching, another year as a group, a podcast, and I cannot wait to see where we go next year. So from all of us here at Talking Elite, we want to say thank you so much for coming out, and that there is nothing left to be said. Adam, I think it's time you close the show, buddy. Say your famous words, and let's send them home, buddy.
In the creepiest way, and good night.